I was recently down in Walt Disney World in Florida, and I had a great time. Gave me a chance to catch up with some family that I haven't seen in a while. If you're a Disney Parks enthusiast, you know that one of the more controversial things that's happening right now is that the remodeling of Splash Mountain. So what they've done is they've torn down the old Splash Mountain, and they're retheming the ride to be a Princess and the Frog themed ride. And the reason that they're doing that is because the original IP that Splash Mountain is based on is a movie called Song of the South. So Song of the South has a reputation of being a very racist movie. I don't know myself, I've never seen it, I've only heard stories, but if those stories that I've heard are true, then yeah, it's totally a racist movie. So a retheme is a good idea. There's another attraction at the Magic Kingdom that I really think could use with a retheme, maybe not a retheme, maybe just even a refresh. I'm talking about the Carousel of Progress. So the Carousel of Progress, if you don't know, is a ride that kind of has 3 or 4 vignettes in it that are supposed to take place at various periods throughout the 20th century. What the ride glosses over a lot is that those particular time periods, they weren't great for everyone. The family that's depicted in the attraction is an upper middle class white family, and unless you were an upper middle class white person in the 1900s, the 1920s, or like the late 1940s, I'm not sure that things were going so great for you, or as well as they're depicted, at least in the Carousel of Progress. I don't love when they change attractions for no reason, but I do think that the Carousel of Progress could use with just a few tweaks here and there. So let's have a look at it together. Why don't you let me know in the comments what you think? Have you seen the Carousel of Progress? Do you think it should be changed? And what parts of it do you think need to be changed? So let's get watching.
Walt loved the idea of progress, and he loved the American family. And he himself was probably as American as anyone could possibly be.
Yeah, it said in the intro that Walt loved the American family, and I think you'll see as the attraction goes on that there's one particular type of American family that Walt really liked, and that was the upper middle class white family.
What year is it? Oh, right around the turn of the century. And believe me, things couldn't be any better than they are today. Say, Mother.
I love that he calls his wife Mother.
But we do have this new wash day marvel. Now it takes me only 5 hours to do the wash. Imagine, it used to take 2 days.
Oh, that's right, folks. Now Sarah has time for other things
like canning and cleaning the oven.
Yes, dear.
The ovens don't just clean themselves,
I know, dear.
All right, so the 1900s, a little bit of casual misogyny, but not too much that was troublesome from that last scene. Let's see what the next scene has to offer.
We've come a long way, though, since the turn of the century, over 20-some-odd years ago. And there's been ads in the paper for months for a movie starring Al Jolson. And he's going to talk and sing.
The movie he's referring to is a movie called The Jazz Singer, which was one of the first movies that had sound attached to it. That movie has since become extremely controversial because it prominently features blackface. The actor Al Jolson does the movie in blackface. So I think they could probably update that instead of venerating this movie that in hindsight is extremely racist. They could just say and I've heard there's movies down at the movie house that, where the actors talk. That's all you had to say. You don't have to single out a specific movie. I'm sure there were a lot of talkies that came out that didn't have blackface in them. I don't know, I'm no film historian, but I'm pretty sure that not every movie back then had blackface in them. So instead of maybe venerating this one super racist movie, they could just talk about how movies had sound now.
And we've got a house full of new electrical servants.
They have a house full of electrical servants, but I'm willing to bet that in the 1920s that an upper middle class house that had these kind of people in it would have another kind of servant in there.
I'm so glad we installed an electric light fixture here on the porch because it's just too darn hot to be sewing inside.
Yes, Sarah.
He's so dismissive of his wife. Instead of just being like, yes, dear, women and their lady problems, am I right, guys? He could just be like, I know, I love having an electric light outside. It really helps me see when I'm coming home late from work or whatever. I don't know.
No privacy at all around this place.
Sorry, Orville.
Interesting bit of trivia. Orville's voice, Uncle Orville's voice, is Mel Blanc.
Considering all the conveniences we now have, I'll say that we're really on easy street these days. It just can't get any better.
I really think they should focus more on the technology as opposed to the idea that things can't get any better, because things probably couldn't have gotten any better for him, but I bet you they could get a lot better for the vast majority of Americans at that time.
Well, it's another Halloween here in the fabulous 40s. Everything is better than ever now.
Yeah, so it's the beginning of the 1940s, he says, or sometime in the 1940s. I'm going to assume it's post-World War II. In the late 1940s, I bet it could get a lot better for a lot of families in America. This is a very narrow interpretation of what life was like for families in the United States in these 3 different time periods, right? And it's a very idealized picture of a family. If you say like, oh, we've got all this technology, like the household technology was the point of this ride, to showcase the progress of household technology, that's great. Only upper middle class white people would have had that stuff. But definitely, I think they could tweak a little bit of the dialogue to make it a little bit more sensitive to some of the other things that were going on at the time, just to, modernize it a bit.
I just heard a new term today on the radio. Fella says we've got something now called the rat race. Did you ever hear that one? It sure describes my life. I'm involved in something now called commuting. I drive into the city for work all day and then turn right around and drive all the way back.
Yeah, okay. So I think the concept that he's referring to is that he lives out in the suburbs now and that he's got to drive into his office to do his job in the city, which is great. But a lot of that, moving out to the suburbs stuff comes from a concept called white flight, where upper middle class white people like this guy left the cities and moved out to the suburbs. Let's not forget, too, that there were a lot of covenants in some of these suburbs that were white only. Like you couldn't move in if you were a visible minority. They're really idealizing the suburban life. And it was great for guys like him. Hell, guys like me. It would have been fine for us. But for a lot of people, it wouldn't have been accessible. Yeah, so I think that they could just tweak a little bits of dialogue and make those last 3 scenes a little bit better, and viewed through the lens of people in 2023. I'm not trying to say that they need to change the entire show to acknowledge all the bad stuff that was happening in the 1900s and the 1920s and the 1940s, but they could make a few tweaks here and there, update the dialogue a little bit, so it's just a little bit more sensitive to the wider scope of things that was going on in those eras that they're talking about. People go to it because it's nostalgic, and a lot of the dialogue that they have maybe was a little bit more digestible back then than it is now. And a few changes here and there could make it a lot more digestible and make the attraction fresh again for a new generation of Disney Parks fans. If they're going to the trouble of kind of gutting the inside of Splash Mountain, they could change a few things in the Carousel of Progress, probably without changing the ride experience that much. Minor changes here and there can really help make the attraction feel more relevant to a younger audience. So we love our nostalgia for sure, but let's give our kids the chance to love it too. So thanks so much for watching the Carousel of Progress with me. Give the video a like if you enjoyed the video. Check out some of my other content up here. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.